Yeah.
Whoa. Good morning, Vikings fans. This is Morning Joe's.
This is the other Morning Joe. Can you hear me, Joe?
I can. And I believe the audience can as well. We're a professional operation. I am your host, Joe Johnson. Again, this is Morning Joe's. We are part of the Big Heads podcast network. I will run a quick 30-second promotion for another sports podcast on Big Heads podcast network.
Hey everybody, want to let you know about the Green and Bold podcast, a podcast dedicated to news, insights, and opinions about the Oakland A's. My name's Joe Stiglitz. I covered the A's for about a decade, first in newspapers, then in the TV world. I'm looking forward to delivering you all kinds of thoughts about the A's.
And I'm David Feldman, longtime A's historian, A's media person, and we're going to get you into everything you need to know about Oakland A's baseball.
So head to bigheadsmedia.com or iTunes or Spotify or anywhere that you get your podcasts and listen to the Green and Bold podcast.
All right, well, now I feel extremely underqualified to be hosting this show, so we got that going for us.
Hey.
Speaking of hey, or...
What do you mean? Dan Lebitard is still out there, so just, relax.
I can't relax. The Vikings are on fire. Kirk Cousins is the MVP. Trey Waynes is imploding. I'm turning into... Twitter Joe. I'm going to be Vikings Twitter Joe from now on. Only extreme takes. There's no middle ground. Either you're the MVP or you suck. Either you're the best running back in the history of the Vikings or you're Toby Gerhart.
Now you know what it's like to be a Vikings Rube right there. You just spelled it out in black and white. Or purple and gold, I guess. Because
yeah.
It's so silly. But go ahead, have your fun.
Well, okay, so off air, Joe was giving me a prelude to the amount of shit I assume I'm going to be getting. Because one of the agenda topics was Cousins for MVP with no explanation. Sometimes I'll link an article or say well, people are saying this, or that's where the narrative comes from. I do that for two reasons. One is because it's people writing articles about it.
And two, it wants to get me going. That's the other reason.
And two, I seem to recall getting absolutely murdered. Okay, so I understand that I was off the bandwagon a couple shows ago. So
it's on the radio or the podcast. You can go back and listen to it.
Actually, I think you might be surprised. That episode has gone missing. I don't know what happened.
Joe's was off his Big Ten bandwagon with Kirk Cousins, and I tried to lasso him and reel him back on.
Okay, but what if Cousins heard that podcast, got so worked up for me, that he decided to step his game up? And now
realistic. Yeah, that's just as realistic as anything you said already, so go with it.
Okay, I think so. I'm a hero. I'm a hero. You're welcome, everyone out in Vikings Rube land. The other reason being that because I understand the hard juxtaposition between those two takes. I just want to remind people that I said at the time when we landed Cousins that the reason I wanted him was because in this system he could be a top 5 quarterback. He could be a top 5 for in the MVP conversation. And I remember saying on the show, maybe even top 3. And then as the season progressed, thinking, God, that was a horrible take. So I just want to...
Clickbait. That's all it is.
It's a little bit of clickbait, or a lot of bit of clickbait. I seem to see these articles coming from... and I'm not here to bash any writers, but from... There's always a common thread, I will say, between that and some of the really extreme takes that people are taking. I get it. I get that, people, I think Vikings fans are just so hungry for something good that they really overcorrect a little bit, or a lot of it. And this Vikings team seems to operate that way in my lifetime. I was actually going to add that to the show. It seems like there's always, in my lifetime, the Vikings have never really been awful for an extended stretch of time. Like we've never been the Browns for 10 years. They
haven't been that throughout their existence, Joe. I've been with them since the outset, and they've never had that stretch. They've always been. They're one of the top 5 or 6 winningest franchise in the history of the league. They're just so.
Yeah, so I guess I get it. They haven't won the whole shebang, but they always keep us interested. They always are entertaining in some way if you take the emotion out of it. I think maybe I've just taken it for granted that they have always kind of, in the seasons that they've struggled, the 3-13 recently under Leslie Frazier, they seem to bounce back relatively quickly. And so we're in a good spot, and we should appreciate it, is my point. And while that doesn't mean throwing labels onto people, extreme labels, I think that we should just be happy with how things are going right now.
There you go.
Like Joe's...
enjoy the season.
If we had the budget of a K fan and existed at the State Fair and then could also time travel back to before the State Fair this year, I would have a Joe Oberly shirt that just, in all really bold font, says, "It's a week-to-week season, moron," and that would be it.
No, I've never called you a moron. I might have, my tone might have intimated.
There it is.
But I never said that. It is. Joe, they play. They're making hay against teams they should be. Look. Unfortunately, as much as we thought the Lions were great. Their record says something different now. They're losing games, and that's what it comes down to. You got to win games in this league, and the Vikings are making hay against teams that they should, and they better make some more this week, and it should be another good game because it's the Washington team, and you have to get up for every game. You have to play to beat them, but when they've played a really good defense that's fired up to beat them, Chicago Bears, they get their hats handed to them.
Yeah.
When they play the Packers in Lambeau Field, which is a really tough place to win, NFC North rivalry game, they should have won the game, but they didn't. And therefore, it was, in part due of Kirk Cousins making a horrible decision. He's great. And so what I said after he did that, I said, last year I saw him have some really good games. So I know he's capable of it. He will have games again, which is what I said. And he's having them. Way to go, Kirk. I love it. It's fun watching him play this way. It's great. He's not the MVP. He might be the MVP of the Vikings if he continues this play, but he's not the MVP of the league. This is a very good team that needs a quarterback to do his job,
distribute the ball,
and not hurt the team, which he did at Green Bay. So that's not MVP. I'm sorry, that's not MVP caliber. If you just do everything good enough to win games and not lose them, I'm sorry. That to me is not MVP.
And I've said this a few times now in the last week. I wrote an article about it. In my talk about MVP statistics last year, or saying the refrain I've used is that Cousins could be an elite system quarterback, and that sounds like you're saying an elite game manager, and it's like, well, isn't game manager the definition of mediocrity? So how can you be elite at being mediocre? I mean, it is, but it isn't in this instance, in that if you're saying he's an elite game manager, statistically, he can rack up some big numbers just doing a limited amount of things as a game manager because of the offense or talent around him. They don't need him to necessarily put the entire thing on his shoulders. Granted, they are taking a lot of shots on the field, and they have been increasingly working.
They are going to have him do that at some point, and
he's going to have to win them a game.
His first test, he failed. He did not win that game in Green Bay. So yes, he can do that, it's going to be part of it. They're going to ask him to do that, but not every game. They don't need to, like you're saying. So,
are you worried about a trap game at all? I know.
I said it, but I said it sarcastically. No, this is it is. I guess if you adhere to those kinds of things, this league is my cliche is any given Sunday. And if you're fired up and you really want to win the game, and you're prepared, and you've got a good game plan, even though you have lesser talent, if you come out and play well, you can beat any team. Buffalo last year versus the Vikings. That was any given Sunday. And now we're finding out Buffalo's a pretty good team. So they were getting better. Washington is not. Washington is not they're a team that's already just fired their coach. They're probably going to rebuild. They're going to start trading assets pretty soon here and have a dumpster fire. But you have Case Keenum and Adrian Peterson coming back, so it's like they could be fired up. They could beat them. The Vikings have to show up to win this game. They can't mail it in. You can't do that in the NFL.
Yeah. They'll be up for it for sure. I mean, AP has been on the injury report coming out of Washington, but he's basically saying that he'll be ready to play. I'm sure Keenum's going to want to beat the Vikings in U.S. Bank Stadium. I mean, we all know what happened there. I'm sure.
Joe, did you read I don't know if you saw my preview for me I posted yesterday?
Yeah, I saw it. Did not read it. Full disclosure.
Okay. Well, I quoted Keenum had his press conference yesterday, and I quoted him, or I listened to it and then used a quote from it. But he was saying that some guy asked him about going against his whole team. He says, "Well, basically, if I keep going the way I am, I'm going to be playing my old team every week." Just a great line. I loved it.
That's
I had to throw it in there. It's true.
I love that, and I love the self-deprecation. That's
in eight seasons. This is his sixth team he's on.
Okay, so yeah,
it's true. It's not only is it funny, it's true. So I mean, yeah, I'm sure there's going to be some of that, but he says it's such a short week, I don't even have a chance to think about that. I've got to, I've got a hell of a defense I'm going against. I've got to be doing my studying, doing my work. He goes, in years hence, he'll be able to look back at the Minneapolis Miracle as something that was an awesome time. But right now, he's grinding. He's a quarterback of a different team, and you got to try to figure out how to win a game.
Yeah, he seems like a nice guy too, and I'm sure he, being on that many teams in that many seasons, he understands the transactional aspect of it, or that it's a business more so than other teams might, or players who really get ingrained with one franchise and then feel like the loyalty's been violated in some way.
That's what I said in the story, that nobody knows better that this is a business than Case Keenum. He absolutely does. You're right.
Yeah, and I mean, in terms of a trap game, I mean, the Lions game wasn't all honky-dory. Like, it wasn't just a complete blowout. The defense...
wow.
For reasons we may scratch the surface of here. What was your take on the defense and how they were performing? I mean, how they were being exploited, rather. Well, how did they get so many yards on us, or so many points?
To be perfectly honest, I was a little on a defensive on this. I'm watching the game. I was watching it on the road while my son was in the seat next to me with it on his phone, and supposed to be giving me play-by-play, but he kept, reacting as a fan would rather than tell me what was going on. So I watched it last night or 2 nights ago when I got back in, speeding through the commercials. So I didn't grind on it. I didn't see it happen in real time so much. So I'm not sure I have a huge feel for that, but boy, they Stafford's a good player, and the secondary has suddenly got some weaknesses, because every one of those guys back there was getting, not everyone, I don't think the safeties were getting too beat up, but the cornerbacks were getting beat. I mean, Wayne's got beat for a touchdown. Rhodes got beat for 2. I don't know who got beat for the 4th one. It was just like, my goodness, cover the guy, but, apparently man on man is not this defense strength, because they certainly showed it that way yesterday.
I get a little bit of a concern that maybe teams in this division have cracked the code of Zimmer's defense, because the 3 worst performances that this defense has had have been division games. You could say 16 points against the Bears isn't that big of a
it is for a backup quarterback, Chase Daniels.
Yep. They could have blanked him. The 21 points to start the Packers game. The best way to sum that up is when I did the halftime show, the first comment that came in was, we need to trade Trey Waynes. And then after the game, the post-game show, the first comment we got was from a different person saying, we need to trade Xavier Rhodes. So it was, I was laughing, and I
Hughes, get him out of here. Get him out of here. He got beat too. Get him out of here.
It's people should really go back and watch those post game, because I talked about it a lot, about why would how would that help what improvement would you get from that? I think that's just an emotional reactionary take that people have. I don't think they mean it seriously. But I do think that was the worst game that obviously the secondary has had. Waynes was getting beat a lot. Rhodes gave up the touchdown and slammed his helmet in frustration. And initially, my reaction to it was, why is he so mad? Like, I thought he was mad at the ref, like a split second. Like he was disputing it was a catch or he thought there was a penalty, but he was clearly mad at himself because he didn't turn towards the ref at all. He was just like walking back to the sidelines, just furiously ranting. Maybe he's frustrated with his, I don't want to speculate on his frustration, but yeah, it wasn't a great day and it wasn't all a positive. But if you want to spin it and try to maybe mitigate some of the negativity, you could say, well, it's a division game, and those games are always different, and blah, blah, blah.
It's a road game against a very good quarterback. I mean, Stafford plays for Detroit, so he suffers by that. But he's really a good quarterback, and he has always given this team fits. You can't discount that. It was a road game. It was a division game, and a team that's got a new coach and has improved. They still obviously have some problems. They didn't. This is why I also want to temper the stuff with Cousins, because they only rushed 3 guys and they keep 8 guys back. Now granted he was finding the open receivers in that 8-man defense back there, but boy, he wasn't pressured. He had so many just clean pockets and all the time in the world to find some of those receivers. He didn't have that against Chicago and got drilled. So got to take it all with a grain of salt. Now as far as our secondary, Joe, I think you're hitting on some things. Maybe the division teams have cracked the code, but they're also, Rodgers and Stafford are very good quarterbacks.
Those
Trubisky
receivers, especially Marvin Jones Jr. On Sunday, they're big and they're what Treadwell was supposed to be. So they're great at contested catches. If you look at most of those touchdowns that Marvin Jones Jr. had, he was covered. He just was getting the contested ball. And I think that was part of the reason that Zimmer wanted a guy like Trey Waynes, even though he is very slender. He wanted big corners for this division. So you're not going to, not every game isn't perfect. I don't think they were just getting outworked or exploited. They were in decent coverage. They just were getting beat on contested catches, which was part of my pregame show keys to the game, brought to you by crippling depression. No, but I was worried about it. Clearly that was a factor. That every team doesn't have a guy as big or as talented at contested catches as Marvin Jones Jr. Not to say that he's some gigantic superstar or anything. He's a good receiver. He had a career day. But I think they'll bounce back against the Washingtons, I'll call them, on Thursday or tomorrow, actually. Wow, time flies.
Yes, indeed.
So yeah, I'm not really, I don't want to get down really on the defense too much. I will really quickly bring up the because they're kind of tied together. The team did waive Sherrills. I have a feeling he could be back depending on what happens. I haven't seen the tea leaves this morning, but the assumption yesterday was that they were going to be making a move to probably bring Dylan Mitchell up from the practice squad, with Thielen most likely being out for tomorrow night.
What about Doxson? Isn't he due to come back off the IR?
Yeah, he said he'd be back for the Cowboys game though.
Oh,
so
okay.
That would be amazing. People should really be afraid of that happening because he is primarily a down the field guy. That's where he made his hay, and he would be going against his former team. I wonder. But Sherrills, obviously, we've talked about him a lot. He is the best punt returner in team history. He's broken pretty much all the records.
It's got to be a maneuver for, like you've just alluded to, a roster maneuvering in that. I felt like the same thing. I can't see them casting him away for good. I mean, he returned some punts in the Detroit game. So did Marcus get hurt or something? And they just can't spare to have, and when they got somebody on the roster who can do what he's on there for, they need the space for somebody else. So I think he'll be back too, depending on the situation and the needs.
Yeah, Doxson is eyeing a November return, but said the last time they talked to him that his hamstring was healing well. Speaking of, with I think it'll be contingent on how well Hughes continues to do returning punts. I think he did a good job in the Lions game. There weren't any turnovers or anything like glaringly terrible. Sherrills just brings this additional element of he always seems to turn nothing into something, and so we'll see how he does at returning punts. But the key there is that they're trying to compensate for Thielen's injury, and all reports are from the MRI that they quote unquote dodged a bullet, and or that's not a quote, I was paraphrasing. They dodged a bullet, and Thielen is no major injury, should be back. I think if it wasn't a short week, he would have most likely played. But they're rolling. They don't see any need really to force him back for a lingering injury.
Nope.
Totally.
That would be a total mistake if they brought him back. A hamstring can re-injure so quickly.
Well, as we saw with Doxson, he's out.
Yes.
He has a hammy too, but he's out that long.
No, and you got I love Adam Thielen, but settle down, understand. He's crabbing to get back in, and he wants to play again. I'm doing everything I can to get him this. Like, that's great. Yes, we know it, but I hope you aren't bugging the coaches because you're not playing. They would be malfeasance if they put him out there on Thursday.
It's like J.J. Watt, itis, forcing yourself to come back, and then it's kind of derailed his career coming back too fast from that back injury. Because he just doesn't seem to be the same guy that he was. That having been said, that catch, Thielen and Cousins have had a couple really beautiful grabs between the two, and that might have been the best that they had. It reminded me of Randy Moss had a similar catch against the Cowboys, I believe on Thanksgiving back in the day, where he was running full speed and then just stopped at the end of the end zone, but he had like 50 yards of momentum built up. But that was a gorgeous catch that clearly wasn't human because he injured himself doing it, and a really, really, really good throw too from Cousins. I mean, it's just a top 10 Vikings touchdown there.
Yeah, I agree with you on the catch by Thielen. I think the throw was unbelievable as well. That was one of Kirk Cousins' better throws as of late. And he had plenty of time, but he waited, made the right decision on who to go to, and put it in the only spot that he could for Thielen to make that play. And Thielen made it. It was awesome.
Yeah, and then you had another really great touchdown, the one that sealed the game, Dalvin Cook's rushing touchdown in the fourth quarter, where the hole I assume he was going for just collapsed, and most running backs would have been tackled for a loss on the goal line or near the goal line, and he cuts it back to his left, and then he jukes a defender, and then like almost in midair jukes again and goes like to go straight in for the touchdown. That guy is really each week showing something that he's just really impressing everybody. I am astounded as to how good he is.
Who did you say? I'm sorry.
Amir Abdullah.
Oh, okay.
From the Big Ten. He had that kick return. It was gorgeous. Mr. Dalvin Cook.
Oh God! Well, do you factor in all the fumbles that Amir has had through his career when you say how astoundingly awesome he is? And
those are SEC conspiracy theories.
Okay.
No, yeah, but Dalvin Cook's touchdown to seal the game just was like another notch in his amazing season thus far. Like, I know we've talked about this. I don't want to really have the hyperbolic conversation of best Vikings running back ever or most balanced, because it doesn't really matter. That's like midweek boring stuff to talk about. But he is just seemingly on another plane of existence this season, and if he can stay healthy, the balance this offense has, I mean, it's hard not to get excited. That having been said, how much do you think is based on the fact that like you called last week when we were prepping for the Lions game, they gave up a ton of yards. They were in the bottom 20s for all of that. I mean, do you think that this is something that they can maintain for the rest of the season? Like, where are you on an excitement level for the Vikings this year in terms of their chances of success?
Well, I saw a thing the other day that said, here's the teams who have certain odds for making the playoffs in each conference, and they had top six teams, and the Vikings were like the fourth best odds to make the playoffs. And I can't get too overexcited because I guess I felt beginning of the season I said they'd win 10 games, and I think they're on pace to do that. I really, you can call me the wet blanket that you like to do, that I am, and I still want to look at their opponents. I want to see them beat quality opponents. I mean, they need to hold serve at home, win all those games, and win a couple on the road. And they've already won those 2 on the road, so that get them to 10. But I think in this division, you want to get to at least 11, with that other victory, 11th victory being against the Packers when they come here. I'm excited, but it's conditional. It's tempered because they have not, 2 of their tougher places they had to play. They laid an egg in each one. They've beaten the team. I mean, we thought the Atlanta victory was a great victory. My goodness, they're terrible. And so as it's turning out, the teams that we're playing and beating, they should. So I'm going to keep it tamped down a little bit. I'm a glass half full guy. I'm excited that they're back, and like you had said in the thing, it's a possible 2-team race. But I think things can change so quickly in this league, and nobody's too far out of it. I want them to. They got to win all their games to get some home field advantage in the playoffs. I fully expect them to make the playoffs, but they got to start positioning themselves right now, and that comes in these next 3 games: winning Thursday night, and then stealing possibly both of these next 2 road games in either Kansas City or Dallas. It's a huge part of the schedule. After that, you've got Seattle left, and then you've got a battle with your division again. So, I'm optimistic. I think they'll make the playoffs, but people can get hurt. We don't want that to happen. We knock on wood so that doesn't happen. But keep playing at this level. The quarterback plays the way he's going, and the defense all of a sudden pulls their head out. They're going to be a tough team to battle with through the rest of the season.
And you could see some of the NFC teams, I'm thinking of Seattle and who else? Well, the Rams.
The Saints are very good.
Yeah, I was going to say, and this wasn't on the agenda, but it just occurred to me. A lot of the NFC powers are making, it seems like, more trade moves towards the deadline than we're used to. The NFL hasn't been a huge trade league historically. It seems to be more and more of one. But you have like the Rams picking up Jalen Ramsey for 2 first-round picks, which is, I know he's amazing, but yikes.
2 first-round picks? Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and then you have the Seahawks got Quandre Diggs to bolster their defensive backfield. There was another trade yesterday that I'm trying to think of. But it's just, you can see that some of the teams the Vikings might be facing, should they make the playoffs, are really going all in.
The Rams probably has to do something like that because they're in a tough division with Seattle and San Francisco, right? I mean, that they've got to.
Oh, it was San Francisco that made the trade. Thank you.
Wow.
They traded for the Broncos, Emmanuel Sanders, the Broncos receiver. And they're 6-0 suddenly. They had an ugly win, but a win is a win on Sunday. I think it was 9-0. There's a lot of people making moves.
The Vikings really don't need to, I don't think. I mean, I think they got
so either.
The team that they like, and they are pretty deep, and right now they're pretty healthy. I mean, if there was what's her face, Washington said left Trent, what's that guy's name?
Trent Williams.
Trent Williams, if they left him on Thursday, left him here, and
I wouldn't be mad about that.
Took a couple jockstraps with them back to Washington. That would be a great thing. But even so, the team's healthy. There is some depth. The offensive line is playing better than they had, but still haven't done it against a really good defense. And I think that's the only spot where I can see them really maybe taking a step up. But offensive linemen just aren't out there for trading, and they're not divas, so they're not out there holding out too much, even though he is. So I'm fine with what the moves they're making. They brought in Sherrells because he was available, and they felt they had a hole there. But I don't other than the wide receiver, I don't see.
And I mean, you can look at the Doxson move as almost a trade because they're getting him back when he's a new player. I think that people conflate him with Treadwell, which I don't necessarily think is fair because he's had at least a season with 500-600 yards, which is obviously not what you want out of your first-round pick at wide receiver, but he's
Vikings got
performed.
BC, though. Yeah, Vikings got BC.
BC, and we actually saw some tight end action, more of it with Thielen going out. I'm really confident in BC, in what he brings to this team. I think he's polished beyond his years, and he seems to always be in the right spots.
What do you think about the tight end stuff, Joe? Do you think that they weren't using them to this point because they hadn't needed to, and now they're Irv Smith is picking up the offense and he's becoming a bigger part, and with him getting some attention, well, then you can throw the ball to Kyle Rudolph. I mean, I almost think it's pretty good play calling. It's like a weapon that they just decided to bust out.
Situationally.
Against the divisional opponent, where they needed it. So, it looks like to me there's a heck of a lot of weapons that a defense has to be concerned about.
Totally. I mean, think about it like the rationale in the preseason. Don't show any more than you really need to keep that weapon in your back pocket. And we all know that Kubiak's really relatively adept at those 3 tight end sets. Then you have the fact that Irv Smith Jr. has been lining up as a receiver in different formations, getting 2 tight ends in that way. Then you have Chad Beebe being hurt alongside Thielen, so you're really having him play as the third receiver, not just in terms of the looks he got, but just actually how he's lining up in those bunches. It's pretty cool to see that's the case, that we're about midway to the season and there's still things that we have yet to see for that reason, and it should maybe put the rest of the league on notice. I mean, I wanted to joke and say maybe some of these other NFC powers are making these moves because they realize how balanced and stacked the Vikings roster is, which would have been in tongue-in-cheek, but I have seen a little bit of that on the national post-game stuff or like NFL Live, where people are saying that this Vikings team is really, really balanced, and I think we're still scratching the surface of that a little bit.
Yeah, I like the term balance. I think they are on offense. I think they are, as a whole, because the defense is really strong. But you've got to have Kirk Cousins ticked off every week to really, see that balance. And I kind of wrote in my story about how Kirk was really just batting away all the, going against your old team. They let you go. Aren't you pissed off? And he goes, oh, no, these guys, they drafted me. I've always had respect and love for this team. They got lots of friendships. And I said, oh, that's too bad because we like Kirk when he's ticked off. Put a chip on his shoulder, and here's a perfect opportunity, and he doesn't want it. So, I think, I said this a while ago to you, I believe. I just said that, when you look at teams that win in this league, and that would be the New England Patriots, they always play with an angry chip on their shoulder. Yeah, an edge. Bill Belichick, exudes it every time he's walking around. He's a crabby, grumpy guy when he's talking to the media. He seems like he's never really happy. That's why they were putting out these memes that he actually smiled last weekend. And I said, I just don't know that we have those people on this roster. I was saying it in one of our game day chats. And, and that starts from the top down. Kurt is not an edgy guy. He's a really nice guy, very level-headed and even personality. And it's so interesting to hear him say that he plays better when he's mad. Well, I think it's required in this league. It's a nasty, nasty league. Yeah. You got to go out there and want to hit somebody. And I think the more that, Zimmer has always talked about, that's what he wants on his offensive line. He wants some nasty to him, And the more that the Vikings can develop a little bit of that within the rules, the better. I think they're just going to play better because you got to want to go out there and just drill somebody. And I
think that might the fight or flight of it, or the adrenaline might override his neuroses or his. It's no secret that he might over prepare or he might be stuck in his head a little bit. And when you're angry, you're just reacting. And that's where that came from. Was he was really frustrated about what was going on. I think it was still the biggest comeback in Redskins history. And he was really yelling that at the media. At least that was my take on it. So what's the line from Dirty Dancing? Nobody puts baby in a corner. Please keep putting Cousins in a corner, because he seems to perform best of all when that's the case.
Sorry, never watched that show. So
I haven't either, but Conan, I used to watch Conan O'Brien in high school, and he had a bit about that he did for like 2 months. I mean, I don't know how much you paid attention to what's going on in Chicago. There's a few Bears guys that shop at the liquor store, Bears fans, one of which he's a really cool guy, and he was going to write for the site, and I can potentially see why. But it seems like they're, in regards to the 2-horse race that we discussed, the Lions may be going on the trajectory of what the Lions typically do. I'm not saying they're out of the equation yet, but it seems like the Bears have no confidence, at least from a fan perspective, in Trubisky, and the Vikings very well could have been better off playing Trubisky than Chase Daniels, the way that the things looked on Sunday. I mean, they're still 3-3. They're not, completely out of it either, but it seems like the Bears could be on the precipice of falling apart. They have all the right ingredients for that recipe, if you ask me. But they have the same issue we have. They've struggled to establish a franchise guy. A lot of people are making the comparison of, like, why would you trade up to take Trubisky second of all and this is really a hindsight take, but Patrick Mahomes was available. You wouldn't have had to trade up. I think they gave up three third-round picks and 2 first-round picks or something, really, that pick and another one to go up to get Trubisky at number 2. And there was a lot of obviously talented guys available after that have panned out. Again, that's just kind of hindsight, but it was a surprising pick at the time. I remember people being kind of like confused as to why this guy who was from a smaller school, who wasn't as well known as other guys,
he's got the body type, he's got probably got the physical tools, and you're hoping you can develop the rest of it. Quarterback's a crapshoot. I mean, we can go through the long list of failures in that regard. From Jamarcus Russell to Ryan Leaf and all through it. It's the toughest position in sports. Not everything's going to work out, and I don't think they're going to, giving what you described, them having just given up for him, that they're going to throw him away after he wrecks his shoulder in the first series of the year, and then comes back for one game and just doesn't look himself yet. He's rusty. I mean, he sat out how many games? I mean,
I agree with you.
It's such a knee-jerk league, and fans are in that regard. They're just look. We went through it with Cousins. He has a bad game, and all of a sudden, God, he's got to go. He's got to go. And
I've seen articles
exactly,
and there's articles in Chicago about trading for Cam Newton because he may be on the outs in Carolina, and it's like they gave up far too much. And I get that they have this quote unquote amazing defense, but I have to stop saying quote unquote so much. I realized
it's a win now league. I mean, they're looking at this defense that they've assembled, and they've spent a lot of capital there. Acquired Khalil Mack, and so they have to kind of win now. And Trubisky's their guy to do so. I mean, he not only does he have the tools, but he's also a good running quarterback, so he adds that extra element to his arsenal. But he just hasn't figured out how to play in the league yet. And the defenses, I mean, we saw him when he was staring down receivers before he came to the Vikings game, and that's he's got something he's got to learn. But you don't get that overnight. I think they'll be a little patient with him, but as you've pointed out, the fans are ready to send him packing.
Well, I'm seeing this article from back during the draft from April 28th of 2017, and the headline is "Bears fans react in disgust after team moves up to draft QB Mitchell Trubisky." That should sum it up. I also think that when it comes to the development of a young quarterback, not enough credit is given to. It's like in psychology, the nature versus nurture. When a guy does end up developing into a really good quarterback, especially a guy who maybe like a Russell Wilson or even a Cousins who wasn't a first-round pick but comes up through the ranks, or Tom Brady or whomever. It's not just that guy. There has to be a lot of things that line up correctly for that to happen. Maybe it's the right coach or the right training team. Maybe it's the right people around that guy. There used to be an adage that I don't think the league subscribes to as much anymore, but I remember it being palpable like 10, 15 years ago, which was if you put a rookie out too early, you can ruin him because he'll get gun shy. And there was that string of really successful rookie quarterbacks like RG3, and that's not the best example, but he was a huge star for that one season, and that kind of threw that idea out the window. And now you're still seeing some teams wait. The Redskins being an example, they have Haskins behind Keenum, but there's a lot of teams that are just putting these guys out there, and if they don't succeed, it's their fault. The reason that they have a really high pick is because the team is typically not that great. I'm looking at the Jets being an example with the game Darnold had. Yeah.
Rosen, Cardinals, look where it's at. They threw him out there to the Lions, and he's now screwing up at another place down in Miami. No, you're exactly right. That happens, and you have to be careful. It depends on the guy and if he's willing to take that on. And you ask, how do you trade up for a guy, or how do you miss a guy? Well, look at Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah,
he should have gone way earlier, and the Vikings had 2 shots at him and passed him up.
2 shots.
They weren't in the position to be when they had their franchise quarterback. So why would they draft another one? Well, you always have to be drafting quarterbacks, and you shouldn't have to. You don't want to draft them when you're so desperate for them that you then have to put them out there quickly if they're not ready. You've got to. Rodgers sat on the sidelines for 3 years before he got his chance, and you could have said he wasted part of his career, but by the same token, maybe that's what helped him become the guy he is. I don't know. It's
I kind of said that too. So, but the way you said it, I like that. I might have to write an article about this, but if you're that desperate, it might do more harm than good.
You should always be drafting him and developing him and see if there's some, you can find some diamond in the rough, and all of a sudden realize, the Vikings need to draft a quarterback. I would say in the first 3 rounds next year, some way, somehow. It seems like a waste of a draft pick, but you have to start saying, is there somebody out there that's better than Cousins? Right now Cousins is your guy, and he's doing well. But 3 weeks ago, that's what I thought when I saw him playing like that. I said, okay, he's going to finish out his contract, and for sure, and he may get another one. It won't be 3 years, and it won't be guaranteed for $84 million. But they have to start looking towards the future and who that guy is going to be, because he's not on the roster right now.
I think Cousins is going to be 32 soon, which, and he doesn't seem like the type of guy that would want to play into like his 40s, for example. I think
I agree with you.
I just get that feeling that, he's got young children. He might not want to get hobbled financially. He's kind of set, courtesy of the purple and gold. So, we'll see how that pans out. But, I'm not... I don't think he'll be around for another 5, 6, 7 years or 7, 8, 9 years or anything like that.
Unless he wins the Super Bowl this year, and then we all fall in love with him, and Joe has a show called "See, I Told You So."
It would just be me laughing for an hour straight.
Exactly.
Just once, I want to have a take that pans out. It seems like the opposite always happens. Getting off the bandwagon, then all of a sudden everyone's talking about him for MVP when I was the only one. But when it comes to the Washington game, we talked about the trap aspect. Are you at all concerned about this offense without Thielen? I mean,
No,
we kind of talked a little bit about Diggs had that really clutch catch. He's also, and maybe I'm just not remembering it. Maybe because it's a little more apropos because of his unhappiness a couple weeks ago. Mm-hmm. But I don't recall Diggs doing things like having a ball bounce off his mask for an interception or having fumbles prior to that, and maybe it's there's a lot of variables. Things can go wrong. I'm not necessarily saying he put too much pressure on himself, but I also think that's why maybe you don't single out your quarterback and make such a show of it, because then you have to play perfectly, and he has been coming through with big plays, but he's had 2 turnovers in 2 weeks, neither of which came to bite the Vikings, and one wasn't technically a turnover because Madison grabbed it for him. Yeah, but that's why you don't do that, in my opinion, or one of the many reasons why you don't do it.
I would agree with you. I'm actually kind of happy that it happened.
Me too.
I don't like I don't in a 20 or a 53-man roster sport. I don't like look at me, I'm the guy. Pay me, trade me, make me happy. It's just not me. I don't like it.
Yeah,
you're a whole team, and so I didn't mind when that he had a couple drops last week. In fact, I put him in my game wrap because I wanted, as much as I talked about his great game, I said, all right, you did this as well, Stefan. Now, can we stop with it's all about me and you make mistakes too, and the rest of, the team is going to. I mean, when you got that many interworking things on every play, people are going to make mistakes. Not everybody's going to be perfect every time, so you better know that. And Kirk Cousins has a whole heck of a lot of other things to deal with than looking for you and making sure that you're getting the proper amount of attention that you want. So just stop. Mm-hmm. And so I have no problem that he's had these issues because they didn't cost the Vikings a game.
And maybe it didn't cost them, but maybe he gained some empathy or some understanding, like you said.
Be quiet and just go on and do your job, and You'll get yours. Settle down, and I think maybe he's realizing that because we haven't heard much about these things since, and I hope it's all water under the bridge and we can move on. And because it's if you want a championship team, this is not how you get there by someone signaling themselves out as being sad and crabby and hurt for one reason or another. It's a team sport. Get out there and roll alongside your teammates out there.
Yeah, I just. Not to rehash all of that because I'm sure people are sick of it, but that what he was doing, that approach it makes things worse. It doesn't help in any way. And I wrote in my game wrap for the Lions game that, and while I was again being tongue in cheek a little bit, if Diggs had any self-awareness, he would apologize to Cousins and say like, I get it, because he's just doing things. Maybe he put the spotlight on himself too much, or he's thinking about making these gigantic plays because he's frustrated and feels like he hasn't gotten the ball, or blah blah blah.
You're giving him too much of a pass. He's human. He's going to make mistakes. He did before, and he will again. And he hasn't come out and apologized publicly, but I bet he's walked over to his quarterback and said it behind the scenes and said, "Yeah, I'm sorry, my bad. I'll shut up and catch the ball when you throw it to me." I hope, because Diggs is a great guy. I really like him, and I think he seems like it. He's a good human being. So he got a little, the team's losing, and all of a sudden everything looks terrible, and all of a sudden you see other people around the league. Oh, I want out of this team because I'm not getting treated fairly. So maybe I should try that. I liked what someone, Brian Murphy, used to write for the St. Paul paper, said when Diggs fumbled, he goes, there's a little truth in every fumble, he wrote in a tweet. And I thought that was
that's a good one.
Pretty good line, yes. And I mean, it's true. And I think, certainly Diggs is smart enough to realize, the big picture now. He was seeing it from a very subjective point of view before, and I'm thinking he's getting the bigger picture now. With all due respect to both him and Thielen, they were right. The offense needs to be balanced. I give them that credit for that. I just didn't like the way they went about doing it. And neither did Chad Greenway, actually. So
listen to that show. It was amazing. They got Washington coming up tomorrow night. Speaking of a balanced attack, they're better against the pass than they are against the run, which is a little bit of a switch from the last couple games, with the Eagles having this vaunted rush defense, but a banged up and bad secondary. Then you have the Lions that were just relatively bad at everything, at least in terms of giving up yardage. And it looks like the Skins are 21st overall in yardage allowed for defense, 12th in regards to their passing defense, and 27th in terms of their rushing defense. So this could be another big day. I've seen C.J. Ham getting a lot of love, which is great because he's been with the team for a decent amount of time, and he's one of those guys that just doesn't have a flashy position, so you don't...
He wasn't in the Big Ten. What are you giving him plaudits for?
It's because I'm getting to it. See, you got to throw out a little bit of that, then you hit him with the left hook of Amir Abdullah, career day. But
God.
I could see the Vikings backfield having a huge, a continued huge day.
I'm hoping for it.
You know, it's just it's so it's like a whole new world. I love, like any low-level rube that watches these games, I love skilled position players, and I love watching. You know, I knew Cook was good, but I didn't think he was going to be like AP levels of good or surpassing AP.
He's got to do it. He's got to do it for a longer time. I mean, I love him. I love Cookie, but he's not AP yet. I don't care. I mean, yes, he's a more well-rounded, a ball player. He blocks better than AP, not a whole lot better, but he does, and he catches the ball much better than Adrian Peterson does. So, but Adrian Peterson has something else altogether that he was for the most part. And Zimmer had a great quote about him the other day, saying that most guys when they get to his age, they start breaking down when they play like that, because as far as physicality and level of attack, he goes, I haven't seen any drop off there. He's still going to just get in your face and do it. And he's not as fast as he used to be, but he's such a specimen, and a workout guy that he's still in pretty darn good shape for his age. And you better pay attention to him when he's out there. So I love Cook, and I hope he has that career. I hope he becomes the best running back in Vikings history. He has that potential if you take his trajectory so far on the limited number of games that he's done. He is on that pace, and I just want to see it continue. To do that, you've got to be in the league a long time and be healthy a long time, and I'm hoping so, because he's a blast to watch.
It really is. It reminds me, and this is an extremely hyperbolic statement, which will be the first on this show for me ever, but I wasn't super old when Barry Sanders played, but I remember watching him a few times and seeing him do just misdirections and juking and cuts. And going back to the touchdown I described earlier in the show, the initial thought was, crap, all right, what down is it now? Because that play got blown up. The defensive lineman got in the backfield, and it's over, and he just, he seems to just... The best way I described it to my girlfriend, who is new to watching the Vikings from this lens, she's been a Packers fan, was that he juked so hard, he basically juked himself out of his own body and tore his ACL, because that was a non-contact injury. He's just got these violent cuts.
Who's this now? Is this Cook or Barry Sanders?
Cook.
Oh, okay.
Sanders was really good at that too, but his was less violent. To me, it seemed more fluid and like almost dancer-like. It was really beautiful to watch. Not
Joe,
to say that.
I'd like to say that you're implying that since I saw Barry Sanders that I'm super old, so just stop it, will you?
I have to throw one of those in there, an episode. It's in the contract from Big Heads Media. But yeah, speaking of Sanders, in longevity, he retired early. Robert Smith retired early, who's, speaking of beautiful runners as well. You get a feeling, though, that had AP not had the injury season and the season with his suspension, that he could have been, and I know that was his goal, was to surpass Emmitt Smith on the all-time rushing record, and I know he's adding a decent yardage to that, and they were using him situationally earlier this season. Like, there were some games where he was a healthy scratch, which he struggled with and talked about in the media. With the regime change, though, it seems like he's the featured guy, or at least
2 weeks ago he had 118 yards, on 20 carries. So yeah, he's starting to be the guy over there again, and I'm happy for him in that regard, that he can still get that a number of opportunities and see what he has left. And I don't think he's going to catch Emmett, but I'm happy for him that he's happy in that regard. But I want him to be very sad after Thursday night that he doesn't get to have revenge on his old team like he wants to do.
Big time. How did we end up with? Oh, what about? No, go for it.
you're describing. I'm just trying to figure out. I still haven't figured out how to describe the way he runs. His feet are so quick, and the moves he makes. And I mean, I like what you said. He juked himself out of his own body.
Pretty much.
At one time, but I'm still trying to formulate in my mind what this guy does and how he's different than anybody else, because it is such a treat to watch. There's no play. You can't stop watching any play when he's got the ball. I mean, you can't just say, "Oh, he's done," because he might make a move and slide through in just this small opening between two players that look like they're about to tackle him. It's wonderful. I just love it.
Yeah, and I really thought that he was more of I don't mean this in a super negative or like a insulting way, but a little bit more dainty or less physical than I've seen him now that he's come back. I feel like he bulked up a little bit and maybe trying to add muscle for injury reasons, but he's always running forward. The defender falls, he gets tackled forward, and then you have Alexander Madison, who is. People are already calling him the best, number 2 back in the league, which I think is a little premature. We haven't seen a ton from him. Obviously, he's a rookie, and we've only had a handful of games. But what they tried to have with AP and Toby Gerhardt, I think they are on the right path to having here as the really two really mirror images. One might be a poor man of the other, but very similar backs in regards to what they're actually able to do. It's not so much a lightning and thunder as it's a lightning and a little less loud or deadly lightning, maybe.
I think the Vikings need to capitalize on this rushing duo while they got it, because sooner or later Madison's going to start looking around saying, hey, I could be a feature back elsewhere. And I know he can't do that. He's on a rookie contract right now, so it's wonderful to have it. I think it's the greatest thing for Cook to not have to take him so much wear and tear in his body, and can hopefully extend his career on the other end and see him have some life in his body. And at the end of the season, that's the key right there, that he's still got his legs like this when the end of the season, the playoffs start. So it's wonderful having Madison there to back him up.
Yeah, and he's been getting a lot more. I mean, I even said before this season, I don't know if Cook will ever be a 20 to 25 touches per game guy, and he's been getting there. So maybe they can dial him back a little bit.
No, it's on my fantasy team.
Oh, okay. So, speaking of which, I just traded for Saquon Barkley with 3 guys, 2 of which I got off the waiver wire just this week.
Goodness.
I'm going for. I have to win something against you.
I didn't okay that trade. I didn't okay that trade.
It's over now, my friend. I got.
Where was that announced that we get to vote on that? That's.
It was the you should have gotten a pending transaction, because I could have voted against it.
I did not. All right, we'll have to talk about it off here. All right, but you say you have to win something against me. You're on the verge. I'm keeping stats here, and we have had in 7 weeks we've had 2 ties, and the rest of the weeks you have won all but one. I won 1 week by 9 points, and you've been chipping away ever since. Last week was once again another 1-point victory, second one in a row for you.
What?
Yes.
So what are we at now? 1 point?
You are down by 1. Just remember that.
Holy.
Let me repeat.
Mackerel.
You are down by 1.
I know, but wow.
At my door, yes.
By this time last year or the year before, I would have been waiting for a letter from NASA to calculate how far behind I was. That puts a little bit of pressure on me for this week.
Good. That's what I hope. So so now, since you won by 1 point, and it just goes to show you how much we've both gotten. You've gotten better at this, and I can no longer coast, which is no fun for me. So I have to actually pay attention. I've got I wrote my game preview, and I think it will be high scoring for the Vikings, as it should be, but you never know. They may come in and lay an egg, because they know that the team they're playing has got 1 win and over a Miami team that has no win. So I got the Vikings on this pre-holiday game for them, pre-holiday Halloween week for them, as 31-13. Get that, those 31-13 numbers.
Oh.
Like, ooh, scary, bad luck, blah, blah, blah. So that's what I got.
I am going to say that the defense is really going to want to come back and get the bad taste out of their mouth from last week. I think the offense will continue to roll without Thielen, even though that will obviously be a factor in the game. I really want to almost pitch a touchdown shutout and go with Washington getting 12 points on 4 field goals. Without Thielen, though, it'll be I'm going to go a little bit less than you and go 27-12 Vikings. If Thielen was playing, I would have gone 41-6 or something insane. But I'm gonna go a little bit. When the pressure is on like this, I really tend to get excited, and then I go for this huge home run.
Yep.
And it historically has not served me well, so I'm trying to be mature about it.
Well, yeah, you're not having
It's working thus far.
We're not having the big point swings this year because you're not having your big mood swings this year. You're just
I'm just right towing the line, man. That's the key. Yeah. So people, if you're looking for games still or tickets to the game tomorrow, and you haven't purchased any yet, and you're sick of the fees that typically go along with it, the quote unquote convenience fees. Go to purpleptsd.com, click on any article, and the top banner will be a ticket club banner. Click on that and use the discount code SKOL, PTSD. That's SKOL as in SKOL, and then P as in Peter, T as in Tom, S as in Sam, D as in dog. And you will get a 12-month premium membership on Ticket Club, which is a $50 value for free. And then you will be able to buy tickets without any fees for an entire year to Vikings, Twins, Wild, Timberwolves, concerts, all of it. So hopefully that'll work out for you. Otherwise, tune in to purpleptsd.com and vikingsterritory.com this week as we cover the game. We'll do a live chat tomorrow night, which should be fun. I'm attempting to get out of work for that. And I will also be on the Scoop on KLGR Radio today. So if you want to tune into that and hear more of my insane ramblings, I look forward to it. But this has been Morning Joe's for the morning of October 23rd. Skol.